his school, and he comes back, and Hiranyakashipu asks him, "What have you learned?" And Prahlad Maharaj says that I've learned the best of all education is to become a servant of Lord Krishna, of Vishnu, and surrender yourself unto Vishnu, and not be engrossed in material things. And when Hiranyakashipu hears this, he is amused. He's not angry, he's not upset, he's just amused. And he says, "Oh, the intelligence of my child has been spoiled by uh, the enemy." So he instructs Chandanamarka to teach Prahlad very nicely and not let him be misled. And so the teachers take him back and they try to indoctrinate him, brainwash him into all sorts of materialistic knowledge about enemies and friends and diplomacy and all sorts of things. And Prahlad Maharaj, he doesn't quite agree or accept or understand these topics because he's so fixed in Krishna. But he's obedient as well, so he just goes along with it, but doesn't actually internalize any of that information. And after a period of time, they bring him back, and his mother, Kayadu, she dresses him nicely and brings him in front of Hiranyakashipu, and he offers his obeisances to Hiranyakashipu because it's his father. And Hiranyakashipu has tears streaming down his eyes. He's got so much affection for his son. He has him sit on his lap and pats him very affectionately, and then he asks him, "So, my dear son, what have you learned? What is the best of all the knowledge you've learned again?" And so Prahlad Maharaj speaks these verses, the ninefold process of devotional service. And so this reflects a couple of qualities of Prahlad Maharaj. One is his fearlessness. He could have easily said something quite mundane. Yes, I learned about art or music, or he could have said something and that would be the end of it. But he was quite fearless to speak the truth. The highest knowledge he has learned from his guru, and he considered Narada Muni's guru, not the personalities, Chandanamarka, who were teaching him all sorts of nonsense, basically. Um, so he was honest enough he was fearless enough to be able to speak the truth, even though the consequence might not have been the most ideal one for him. He spoke the truth fearlessly. And the second quality is he always had the best interest of all living entities in his heart. And he truly believed that the highest benediction, highest good fortune for anybody is to actually hear about these topics and practice them in their life. So even though his father was inimical towards Lord Vishnu, he did not hesitate to speak this so that his father could benefit. So these two qualities of fearlessness and the desire for the welfare of all living entities very strongly come out. We'll read the purport about Smaranam, and we can discuss a couple of points. So I'll read from the purport on Shravanam. Shravanam, hearing of the holy name of the Lord Shravanam is the beginning of devotional service. Although any of the 9 processes is sufficient in chronological order, the hearing of the holy name of the Lord is the beginning. Indeed, it is essential, Srila Prabhupada says. As enunciated by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one is cleansed of the material conception of life, which is due to the dirty modes of material nature. When the dirt is cleansed from the core of one's heart, one can realize the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha. Thus, by hearing the holy names of the Lord, one comes to the platform of understanding the personal form of the Lord. After realizing the Lord's form, one can realize the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and when one can understand his transcendental qualities, one can understand the Lord's associates. In this way, a devotee further advances and further towards complete understanding of the Lord as he awakens in realization of the Lord's holy name, transcendental form and qualities, his paraphernalia, and everything pertaining to him. Therefore, the chronological process is Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. The same process of chronological understanding holds true in chanting and remembering. When chanting the holy name, form, qualities, and paraphernalia is heard from the mouth of a pure devotee, his hearing and chanting are very pleasing. Srila Sanatana Goswami has forbidden us to hear the chanting of an artificial devotee or non-devotee. I'll continue. Hearing from the text of Srimad Bhagavatam is considered the most important process of hearing. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of transcendental chanting of the holy name, and therefore the chanting of and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam are transcendently full of mellows. The transcendental holy name of the Lord may be heard and chanted according to the attraction of the devotee. So Srila Prabhupada gives us a little bit of flexibility here, but he still focuses on the importance of hearing the name, pastimes of Krishna. So he will bring that out in this part of the purport. One may chant the holy name of Krishna, or one may chant the holy name of Lord Rama or Nrsingadev. Ramadi Murti Shukala Niyamena Tishtan. The Lord has innumerable forms and names, and devotees may meditate upon a particular form and chant the holy name according to his attraction. The best course is to hear the holy name, form, and so on from a pure devotee of the same standard as oneself. In other words, one who's attached to Krishna should hear and chant and hear from pure devotees who are also attached to Lord Krishna. The same principle applies for devotees attracted by Lord Ram, Lord Nrsimha, and other forms of the Lord. And here, Srila Prabhupada zeroes in. He says the same. He says that because Krishna is the ultimate form of the Lord, Krishna is the Bhagavan Swayam, it is best to hear about Lord Krishna's name, form, and pastimes from a realized devotee who is particularly attracted by the form of Lord Krishna. In Srimad Bhagavatam, great devotees like Shukadeva Goswami have especially described Lord Krishna's holy name, form, and qualities. Unless one hears about the holy name, form, and qualities of the Lord, one cannot clearly understand the other process of devotional service. So I'll read this sentence again. This is really the crux of this purport. Srila Prabhupada says, unless one hears about the holy name, form, qualities of the Lord, one cannot clearly understand the other processes of devotional service. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends that one chant the holy name of Krishna, Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. If one is fortunate enough to hear from the mouth of realized devotees, he is very easily successful on the path of devotional service. Therefore, hearing of the holy name, form, and qualities of the Lord is essential. So for emphasis, I'll just read it again. Therefore, hearing of the holy name, form, and qualities of the Lord is essential. It is not an additional detail. It's not something we should do or we may like to do. Srila Prabhupada very clearly says it is essential. And then he quotes from Srila Narada Muni in the first canto, 5th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a very beautiful verse, and Srila Prabhupada has given a wonderful purport for this verse. So, and his humility comes through very beautifully in the purport of this verse. So I encourage devotees to go back and read it. I'm sure you've read it before. You can read this again in 1.5.11. You can read the purport later on today. This verse, Tadvag Visargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhattivatyapi Namananantasya Yashonkitani Yat Shrinvan Digayanti Grananti Sadhava. Verses describing the name, form, and qualities of Anantadev, the unlimited Supreme Lord, are able to vanquish all the sinful reactions of the entire world. Therefore, even if such verses are improperly composed, devotees hear them, describe them, and accept them as bona fide and authorized. In this connection, Sridhar Swami has remarked that a pure devotee takes advantage of another pure devotee by trying to hear from him about the holy name, form, and qualities of the Lord. If there is no such opportunity, he alone chants and hears the Lord's holy name. So Srila Prabhupada has very clearly mentioned that there should be no impediment to hearing, because even if there is nobody else to hear from, we can chant the holy name and hear ourselves chanting. That also is hearing. I just wanted to make a couple of points from the purport. Srila Prabhupada speaks about Sikshastakam verse 1 in the purport, and he emphasizes that this process of hearing is essential. That is the beginning of our devotional service. So unless we hear, there's no possibility of kirtanam, because you've not heard what to do kirtanam of. And if there's no hearing and chanting, then there is no possibility of remembrance, because what will you remember? You have not heard and chanted anything. And some of the other processes that follow, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, are all dependent on our ability to hear and chant. Srila Prabhupada very often would quote from from the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and this verse is in the very first chapter, and it's the second verse that Shukadeva Goswami starts speaking, and he speaks this verse. He says, Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nranam Santi Sahasrasah Apashyatam Atvatatvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. Srila Prabhupada would quote this often in his classes and lectures and even talks, that he says, for those who are materially engrossed, and I'll read the translation directly from Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's translation says, those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. So for materially engrossed people, there are many topics for hearing. So this propensity for hearing is there in everybody. We always want to hear something. But the problem is most people in the world don't know what to hear. So they hear all sorts of things. And even those who might be slightly spiritually inclined end up hearing all sorts of confusing things and Mayavad and so many other things, and they get totally confused. And we are so fortunate that we came into contact with Lord Chaitanya's movement, and specifically Srila Prabhupada and his books and his purports and his disciples, that we're extremely fortunate to be in this sangha of the pure devotees of the Lord, Srila Prabhupada. So the opportunity to hear from Srila Prabhupada is something that we've received. And so, unlike the vast majority of the people in the world who, even if they have the inclination to hear, don't have the good fortune of having come into contact with pure devotees of Lord Chaitanya, represented by Srila Prabhupada, we have that good fortune. So we know what to hear, and we know how to hear. So then the question is really around how can we actually implement it, not so much what. Right? So we're very fortunate that we don't have to figure out what should we hear. The only question is how can we actually maximize this opportunity of hearing. I would also like to read a little bit from one part of Srila Prabhupada's commentaries on the topic of hearing, and this comes in the Krishna book, and this is in the 7th chapter of the Krishna book, entitled The Salvation of Srinavarta. And in that chapter, Srila Prabhupada spends the first 2 paragraphs just focusing on hearing, the concept of hearing. So I just wanted us to be able to just meditate on what Srila Prabhupada is saying, specifically on the topic of hearing from the Krishna book. So I will just read the first 2 paragraphs. Srila Prabhupada says in this chapter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is always full of 6 opulences, namely complete wealth, complete strength, complete fame, complete knowledge, complete beauty, and complete renunciation. The Lord appears in different complete eternal forms of incarnation. The conditioned soul has immense opportunity to hear about the transcendental activities of the Lord in these different incarnations. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Janma karma chame divyam. The pastimes and activities of the Lord are not material. They are beyond the material conception. And the conditioned soul can benefit by hearing such uncommon activities. Hearing is an opportunity to associate with the Lord. To hear his activities is to evolve one's transcendental nature simply by hearing. The conditioned soul has a natural aptitude to hear something about other conditioned souls in the form of fiction, drama, and novel. That inclination to hear something about others may be utilized in hearing the pastimes of the Lord. Then one can immediately evolve his transcendental nature. Krishna's pastimes are not only beautiful, they're also very pleasing to the mind. And Srila Prabhupada continues in the second paragraph. If someone takes advantage of hearing the pastimes of the Lord, the material contamination of dust accumulated in the heart due to long association with material nature can immediately be cleansed. So here Srila Prabhupada is referring again to the Shikshastakam first verse. So you can see how Srila Prabhupada's message is so consistent across so many different books. Lord Chaitanya, and Srila Prabhupada continues, Lord Chaitanya also instructed that simply by hearing the transcendental name of Lord Krishna, one can cleanse the heart of all material contamination. There are different processes for self-realization. And here Srila Prabhupada is referring back to the 9 processes. He says there are different processes for self-realization, but this process of devotional service, of which hearing is the most important function, when adopted by any conditioned soul, will automatically cleanse him of the material contamination and enable him to realize his real constitutional position. Conditional life is due to this contamination only, and as soon as it is cleared off, then naturally the dormant function of the living entity, rendering service to the Lord, awakens. By developing his eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, one becomes eligible to create friendship with the devotees. So real friendship with devotees can only happen when we actually connect with the Lord. Srila Prabhupada reminds us of that. So Parishad Maharaj recommended from practical experience that everyone try to hear about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. This Krishna treatise is meant for that purpose, that the reader may take advantage of it and attain the ultimate goal of human life. So that is, and Srila Prabhupada has talked about this in so many different purports of Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita and other books as well. So I just wanted to pick out a couple of places within just the books that we read, how much emphasis Srila Prabhupada has given to this concept of hearing. And like I mentioned earlier from the second canto, first chapter, Srila Prabhupada would quote that verse a lot, that for materialistic persons, there's so many topics for hearing. And they're engrossed in hearing about it all day, all night. There's so many people, there's so many newspapers that print so many topics of politics and so many other things. There are so many people just talking endlessly about sports and politics and all sorts of topics, talk shows. So because there's a propensity to hear. Like I said, the concept is to understand what we should hear and how we should hear. And I wanted to just mention one other topic, and then we can open it up for comments and any questions anybody might have. That as grand disciples, most of us are grand disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And I've observed this tendency to not really read Srila Prabhupada's books. And many devotees, I'm not talking about this group of devotees, you're all studying Srila Prabhupada's books. But in general, the tendency to sincerely study Srila Prabhupada's books has to be cultivated very, very strongly. Because our ability to practice Krishna consciousness, to follow the principles, is heavily dependent on us studying Srila Prabhupada's books. Everything that we need to practice our Krishna consciousness is in Srila Prabhupada's books. And I've heard from many disciples of Srila Prabhupada, sannyasi disciples and others, that when they speak about Srila Prabhupada's contributions, the most important contribution that Srila Prabhupada gave us was his books. He spent so much energy in giving us these books. Of course, Srila Prabhupada has innumerable contributions. We cannot count them. But when you speak about all these contributions, the books that he gave us that will last 10,000 years or more are his most lasting contribution. And as followers of Srila Prabhupada, it is our responsibility to sincerely study these books and understand these books. And this is a very, very prominent form of hearing. So when we read and study Srila Prabhupada's books, we're actually hearing directly from Srila Prabhupada. And we get the opportunity to hear what Srila Prabhupada, his mood, his instructions. And that is a very, very prominent thing that we should definitely do in our lives. Make it a point that every day for a certain period of time, it's an hour. If you can spare an hour, it's an hour. If it's half hour, whatever it is, we should make it a point to study Srila Prabhupada's books so that we can hear directly from Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya, and then able to get the strength and the intelligence to be able to practice Krishna consciousness to the best of our ability. So I will summarize here this whole concept of this in the devotional practice of hearing becomes the most prominent one because it is the foundation. Srila Prabhupada says in the purports, and this purport he will read plus other purports that it's not that you have to do all nine. Any one of these processes is sufficient. And there's discussions about various personalities who perfected their lives in following one of these areas. Shukadev Goswami was, has perfected his life by just the concept of kirtanam. He's the representative for that kirtanam. Parishit Maharaj is for Shravanam, for hearing, and so on. So there are many different personalities, Atma Devedanam, Bali Maharaj, and so on. But everything begins with hearing. Because if you don't hear, like for anything that we need to do, if you want to go somewhere, you hear about that place, you hear how wonderful it is, how much uh, pleasure everybody gets by going there, then you develop a desire to go there. So anything that you do, even material life, begins with hearing, and spiritual life is no different. So our attraction for Krishna begins by hearing, and that's why this process is so heavily emphasized in the purports of Srila Prabhupada. So those were some of my thoughts. You can speak, I think, for hours on this topic of hearing with so many different examples. Uh, but I wanted to just pause here and see if there are any specific comments anybody would like to make, or anybody would like to share something or ask any questions. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments this time?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I want to thank you for a very nice class, very important subject matter. And there's so much we could say on this topic. Really, the topic of hearing can be discussed for days, but I was reminded by your words, speaking about how essential hearing is, that even to be able to, not just for the sake of being able to understand the fundamentals of Krishna consciousness and devotional service in particular, but to be able to actually practice following the regulative principles. For example, there is a famous statement from Srila Prabhupada. He said that if you do not read these books, you will simply eat, sleep, and fall down. He always encouraged us in the strongest terms to scrutinizingly study his books, not just to read them, but to study them and learn the content. And his specific instruction was that all of his disciples must read a minimum of 1 to 2 hours per day. But it's hearing from Srila Prabhupada in that manner not only gives our mind transcendental subject matter for contemplation, and not only does it provide us with guidance and reveal Krishna to us, but by that process of hearing, that essential category of devotional service, we gain the strength to actually adhere to the regulative principles. And if we fail to do that, Srila Prabhupada has made it clear that you will not be able to follow the regulative principles. And if you can't follow the regulative principles, then you can't progress. Your advancement will be stymied. You'll be stuck. You can go on for lifetimes like that and never make any progress. So very, very essentially, so critical, so extremely important. Somehow or other, we have to structure our daily routine such that we ensure that we have the time for reading and of course, for completing our minimum number of rounds, at least the minimum. And sometimes for devotees, it's a very hard thing to do because we have sometimes many responsibilities. Householders particularly have difficulties. Sometimes work long hours, and after that they have so many responsibilities to their family. Their time is very limited. So it means that we have to work very hard at honing the efficiency of our routine. And but if something must give, if somehow or other there's not enough minutes and hours in a day, and something has to give, the thing that gives should never be the fundamentals of our sadhana. Anything else can give, but that cannot give because our life depends on it. It's life and death. Um, Devotees often repeat Srila Prabhupada saying that he used to criticize his disciples that you are not sufficiently afraid of Maya, and it's true, of course. Um, we don't understand uh, the extreme precariousness of our situation, how dangerous it is, and how easy it is to get into a dreadfully bad situation. We're hanging on by the skin of our teeth here somehow or other by the grace and mercy of Srila Prabhupada. But it's very easy if we don't very strictly follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions. It's easy to fall down. It's hard to pick yourself up. It's extreme. Actually, it is impossible to pick yourself up. You cannot do it. It only becomes possible with the help of a pure devotee. You require the assistance of some other elevated personality. You can't help yourself. You need the mercy of your spiritual master or another great Vaishnava. But so falling down is easy. Getting up again can be very difficult. It's like falling in a ditch. It's easy to fall in a ditch, sometimes very hard to climb out. Um, but falling means um, you're bound to the laws of karma, and you have to take birth again, and you don't know where that birth may be or what the circumstances may be. It can be very bad. Um, the opportunity for devotional service can be lost, not completely. If you've rendered any devotional service, you are guaranteed to get another chance, but the circumstances may be unfortunate in a lot of ways, and um, you have to also accept all kinds of terrible suffering. It's all unnecessary. It's needless suffering. If we're very careful, um, if we give proper attention to our sadhana, we don't have to suffer that fate. If we're intelligent, we'll be serious about that, ensuring that we don't have to accept all kinds of needless suffering. But we're not sufficiently afraid of that condition. We don't take it too seriously. We think somehow or other it won't happen to me. My spiritual master is so kind and merciful. Srila Prabhupada is so kind and merciful. Krishna is so kind and merciful. Surely I will be saved. But you have to fly your own plane. If you choose to jump into a ditch, there's not really anything that anyone can do. We have to want to help ourselves, and we have to demonstrate our sincerity by endeavoring earnestly to help ourselves. Then we can expect mercy. But if we are continually making mistakes without feeling any sense of responsibility about our own progress, then we may leave Guru and Krishna no alternative but to teach us the hard lesson of having to go through some misery so that we can become more serious. It happens. It happens to devotees. It's not that everyone that approaches Krishna consciousness is just automatically, effortlessly saved. You have to make a very serious effort. And even with that, it may take you lifetimes to perfect your Krishna consciousness, depending upon the extent to which you apply yourself. So there's no time to waste. We don't know how much time we have. One thing to take into account is that, speaking from experience, I can say that prosecuting Krishna consciousness will never be easier than it is right now. It will get actually harder as time progresses, as you get older and your body begins to break down more and more. All of your faculties begin to disintegrate, your cognitive functions begin to fail. It becomes very hard, becomes extremely difficult trying to maintain all these things. Your power of concentration diminishes, your memory diminishes. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing. Why? Right now, from Srila Prabhupada described it from the time of birth, it is a process of dying. Gradually, everything diminishes. While you're young, you have strong faculties. You have a lot of good opportunities, and best to take advantage of the opportunities for Krishna consciousness while you are young and strong, healthy. It will not always be like that. It can become extremely difficult. Sometimes just trying to keep body and soul together can consume all of your time and effort. This happens to devotees. It can be a terrible struggle. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts. Hearing so important, extremely important. If you don't read these books, Srila Prabhupada assured us, you will simply eat, sleep, and fall down. And devotees have experienced practically that that's what happens. They neglect hearing. They can't maintain their transcendental status. They fall to the bodily platform, and then they're victimized by the material nature, and anything can happen. It's very, very dangerous. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you again.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for sharing your experience and wisdom. Always invaluable to hear from you. Thank you. I see there's a hand up. Is there a question?
Hey, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for for giving class, and thank you, Taraka Prabhu, for sharing. I really appreciate what you said about hearing from Srila Prabhupada, reading his books, and so forth. But I just wanted to comment and make shed some light on the point that it's important to hear from an authorized source, which is Srila Prabhupada, but his books, the publishing, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust Incorporated, and all these kind of things. It's really important to pay attention to what you're reading, the publisher of where you're reading it from, because in this days of artificial intelligence where voices can be mimicked and anyone can write something and put it in bounded pages and call it Srila Prabhupada, but what cannot be mimicked is the publisher, the source that is coming from. So if the publisher is not authorized or vetted or you know, pay their taxes, so to speak, to keep in business, it's really important to know that if the publisher is not actively authorized, anything can be written and said, Srila Prabhupada said. And and I'm not implying that the BBT is not authorized. I'm just simply saying sometimes people are just not attentive to some of these legal matters, that it is important to make sure that is not mimicked. People can't be fooled. And Krishna has given these instructions to us over and over in the Srimad Bhagavatam, about paying attention, being aware of who's your authority and where you're hearing it from, and not just to say Srila Prabhupada said it, but where are you quoting that from? So I
Yeah,
just wanted to share that. Thank you.
thank you, Mother. It's a very important point that uh, Srila Prabhupada is not, and I'm using present tense, not past tense, is not a one-dimensional personality. And it's not like we feel that we can just grasp Srila Prabhupada in the palm of our hand in terms of understanding the complex dimensions of his personality and his ability to transfer Krishna consciousness. So a lot of times people will take a statement from Srila Prabhupada, which was delivered in a specific situation, context, completely out of context, and try to apply it in a different way. So we have to have the intelligence. And I've heard from uh, many of my very senior God brothers and that hearing from Srila Prabhupada, so when we hear, and especially I'm speaking specifically about for the grand disciples of Srila Prabhupada, that we should definitely hear from two sources. When I talk about hearing, I'm talking about hearing lectures because they're all available. We should definitely hear from our spiritual master, and we should hear from Srila Prabhupada. These two personalities, we should routinely, and in fact, uh, almost every day, or we should maybe even if we can hear every day from both personalities, at least alternate. That one day you hear from your spiritual master, one day you hear from Srila Prabhupada. That have heard this level of prescription, so that you get so for every child you need the mother's love and the father's love, and so Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual master combined to give us both to nourish us in our spiritual life, and this is not to be taken lightly, right? That we have to hear, and we live in an age where this is available to us. So you can think about it, right? Even like 2 generations ago, right? The disciples of Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't have the opportunity to hear audio recordings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Jagannath Das Babaji. It was not an option. It was not there. Like even 100 years ago, it was not like you could walk around. You're taking a walk and you have something in your ear and you're hearing your spiritual master. That was not an option. That didn't exist. But now we have the option. We could be walking on a treadmill and taking care of our physical body, right? And hearing Srila Prabhupada, hearing our spiritual master. So this option that we have in with modern technologies, we should take full advantage of. We could be going on a bus or a train, or you could be driving your car, but you could still be hearing Srila Prabhupada. You could be hearing your spiritual master. So in this day and age, nobody can say that I don't have the ability or the option of hearing. There should be no excuse. You don't have to. Previously, I mean, Srila Prabhupada had to actually go physically to one Ultadanga Junction Road to hear his spiritual master for the first time. He couldn't just tune into some downloaded podcast and hear him. This didn't exist, right? But now we have that option. So again, we should definitely hear great Vaishnavas in person whenever we have the opportunity, because we should not minimize. It's not like it's not important. That's very important. But if that's not available to us, we have so many other ways of hearing. And so that's the point I wanted to make. Taraka Prabhuji, you had something to add? You have your hand up.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I joined class a little late, but I was hearing some of the things that you were saying. And I wanted to say that also I'd like to add in also hearing from Srila Prabhupada and hearing from the our spiritual masters is also hearing from some of the wonderful senior disciples as well of Srila Prabhupada. When I was in India and was attending the Kartik Yatra with Ratna Swami, and were able to hear from many of the senior disciples of Srila Prabhupada from all around the world. Um, it also was so inspirational to hear their stories and to hear their stories about Srila Prabhupada, putting their particular stories into context of their particular life experiences. And I would also say that one of the things that I purchased when I was in um, on these retreats was Srila Prabhupada's lectures, and just being able to listen to Srila Prabhupada's lectures has been such a wonderful experience. I mean, just listening to them kind of constantly, some of his lectures, and then referring back to his books in terms of when he's talking about particular things. And then also, I say listening to, of course, our spiritual masters. Bhakti Tirtha Swami is no longer here with us, but we do have his audio and video lectures that we can listen to, and we have some of his books, as well as the other senior disciples who we have faith in as well to listen to those things. It's so important to hear. And also being in the assembly of devotees when we're together and discussing and being able to be corrected on particular ideals or concepts is, I think, is so important as well. And hearing from what the devotees have to say in regards to getting further context of Srila Prabhupada's teaching, because maybe we might not have the particular understanding, but another person, as we discuss and have sangha together, we can get clarity in that sangha as well. So also enhancing and making an intentional effort at being more intentional in our own personal sadhana, in our japa, and in our kirtan, and in the association of devotees. So I just want to thank you for saying those things what Tarka was saying and what Mata was saying as well, in terms of just hearing and listening and being able to hear every day, you know, different the classes, from Srimad Bhagavatam, Charitamrita, and Bhagavad Gita is so important. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I have one quick thing. Least anyone have any doubts about the authenticity of the statement from Srila Prabhupada that I paraphrased? I have here the actual quote, which is from a purport to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 25, text 278. Srila Prabhupada says, all the devotees connected with the Krishna consciousness movement must read all the books that have been translated, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and others. Otherwise, after some time, they will simply eat, sleep, and fall down from their position. Thus, they will miss the opportunity to attain an eternal blissful life of transcendental pleasure.
Right. That's Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you very much.